Hi, and welcome to another edition of The Right Stuff. I'm the Queen, Parker J. Thank you for joining me. All this month, we have been talking about sci-fi and horror tropes from a biblical perspective. And today, we got to talk about zombies or the undead. How does that all relate to biblical passages? What does the Bible say about the undead? Can you really have people who are undead in real life? What about this whole topic? I don't know where we're going to go with it, but my guest, Clint Plyler, knows. He is the author of a lot of different books, and I recently had him on the show last year as I showcased my Christian authors who write dark fiction. But in this case, he wrote a little Halloween story for the kids. And it wasn't really even Halloween stories, which is a little spooky story. So we had a great time talking last year. I'm so glad he's back again to help us talk about zombies, the undead, and resurrection. I think that's what we'll call it. We'll figure it out. So, Clint, thanks so much for being with me today.
Hey, Parker, thanks for having me. It's good to be back. Thank you very much.
Now, we got to talk about zombies for a minute. Do you want there to be a zombie apocalypse? Just right off the bat.
Ooh, boy, I watch the movies and I'm like, it almost seems tempting. Like, boy, couldn't it be fun if, but not really. I don't really want one. I mean, no, maybe fun to watch on TV, but not for real. So,
In real life, this is not good. In real life, I would probably just be the first DB, right?
oh,
Because
no.
I can't ride, I can't run, I could walk really fast. The only time I can run is I'm running for my life. That's
Oh
the
my
only time I
gosh.
can run is when I'm running for my life. And I can't run that fast. I'm heavy set. So that's not gonna happen anytime soon.
Oh, I think we'd all be in trouble, Parker. We'd all be like, it's just a matter of time they'd get us. So,
Like, just give it the ghost. I'm going to heaven anyway.
yeah.
This is just ushering that in faster. But the thing about zombies, what do you think, in your opinion, zombie movies and zombie apocalypses and zombie things fascinate us?
I don't know. I think it's just in general, just, we all know we're mortal beings and, the death is, a mystery, as a believer, as a Christian, I have obviously my thoughts in the Bible on death, but I think just because we haven't gone through it, it's a mystery and we don't want to die. So there's always that thought of like, is there any way I could stay alive? And then I think just, our crazy imaginations, throw in some, dark, spooky stuff, kind of things like that. I think we kind of get fascinated with, well, what if we could stay alive? But it was terrible. So maybe that's why, but
Did you
yeah,
ever watch that show, The Greatest Warrior, or I'm sorry, The Deadliest Warrior? It used to be, I think, on Spike TV. I think it
I
was
don't
on
know.
Spike TV. It was a show that compared the warrior of a different genre. For example, it would say Hitler versus Darth Vader, for example, or in this case, it was zombies versus vampires, both which are undead. Okay.
Yeah.
And they did a scenario where they fed all this information into the computer and they would do different tests to see which one had various strengths. Like, of course, a vampire is cognitive, which helps, and
Right.
a
Right.
zombie is not cognitive. They're just flesh eating and blah blah whatever. And at the end, they did a scenario where they fed all the information that they collected into the computer, and the computer simulated various battles between the vampires and the zombies. And at the end, the vampires won.
Really.
How
I
that
would,
happened, I don't know.
yeah, I would think a zombie, like their blood wouldn't be any good. So the vampire would just starve, I would think, So,
Well, it was more of
um,
a battle. It was more so the battle of the
oh, yeah.
zombies as more than just eating them, because of the vampires. Because in the scenario, because they did a reenactment, in the scenario they had like three vampire and a horde of zombies, which is the strength of a zombie is the horde because
Yeah.
unfortunately people die all the time. So,
That's
um,
right.
but they ended up losing because the vampires were cognitive and they can make decisions and choices and stuff like that. But then they rated a zombie bite a dog bite. I don't know why they use a dog bite for a strength. I have no idea. Because I'm thinking to myself, they're still undead. They're dead things. How are they going to move? But
Yeah.
anywho.
You
So
got to suspend rational thought when you watch these kind of movies. So just kind of enjoy it the best you can, and not think too much about it.
the other thing that I like too, as we get into our topic here, old zombies versus new zombies. The old zombies, because they were the undead, they would come after you very slowly because they're undead. They didn't do anything much, right? But the new zombies, after that movie, 28 days later, they're running after you. And so someone said that just totally changed the genre of zombies, that they could run after you. Now zombies tend to take on more human characteristics as people delve into the genre and put their own spin on zombie lore. So, talking to zombie lore, just for a quick history game, because I thought this would be important for us to just briefly touch on. We're not experts in this thing, we're just consumers of fiction. Zombies are featured in Haitian rural folklore as dead persons physically revived by the act of necromancy, or of a sorcerer or a witch. Um, so there's that. And so a zombie remains under the control of the sorcerer or the witch as a personal slave, having no will of its own. Now, we could obviously see the parallels between the slave trade of the Haitian and the colonies under the European culture at that time and this. So they were putting a metaphorical place to it. Now that's changed to where zombies are almost autonomous, even though they're dead. They're just
Right.
only there for survival of food. So maybe they're just a slave to survival. And so this has been explored. This whole zombie thing has been explored in many different ways. I really liked how I Am Legend did it.
Yeah.
In I Am Legend with Will Smith, which is an excellent movie. If you haven't seen the movie, we're going to give you spoilers because you should have saw it by now. In that movie, they were mindless, strong, very strong actually, and they just weren't able to be helped. And Will Smith kept trying to help them, but he couldn't. So
Yeah.
there we go. So it kind of touched on zombies. Dear listener, if you have some comments about zombies, we'd love to hear your comments in the comment section below. But as you were tackling this topic, what made you say, I'm going to talk about zombies and I'm going to do it in the pulpit? So
Yeah.
go ahead and let people know about it.
That's not something you usually do a lot of. And so, I was thinking about the resurrection of the dead, as a pastor. And I thought, about zombies. And I was thinking, a lot of times resurrection of the dead through like zombie books, zombie movies, it makes it look really bad. I've never seen a really good spin on it. And like you, I love these movies. I'm ashamed to admit it, but I love some of these movies like I Am Legend. I love that. And I Am Legend is almost like a remake of the Omega Man, I think, with
Yeah, it
Charles
is with
Heston.
Charles
So
Heston. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah, and that one they had a lot more like organization. Like zombies were like they knew what they were doing. So it's kind of interesting how it shifted over the a couple of decades, I guess. But so I was thinking about all these different zombie movies that I've watched over the years, and thinking, man, they make Resurrection of the Dead seem like really scary and spooky. But I was thinking, well, the Bible doesn't really portray it the same way, but there's some really crazy, crazy in a good way, but crazy stuff in the Bible that's kind of zombie like, even though it's not zombies as we might think of it. So I just started wrestling with those ideas. Like, I've got to talk about this as here's what the Hollywood / writers kind of think about it, but yeah, here's what the Bible says about it. So I thought, let's just go for it. I threw the idea out on social media, and all of a sudden people were like, yeah, do it. And at my church, people are getting excited about it. Like, I can't wait. We can't wait to hear your sermon about zombies. And I'm like, okay, let's go for it. So we're going to do it. So,
And you're kind of looking out to the audience like, so there's a need to talk about this.
oh yeah, there's
And you
definitely, I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna get in trouble for saying this. I've preached in a lot of churches where sometimes you wonder, are they alive? Are they awake? Are
right,
they
exactly. Hey, we need to be honest. The Lord said he's going to fix the church first. He's going to take care of his stuff, fix it first. I always
Oh
say I don't want to be a zombie in the Lord's church. Lord, please
no,
never be that. But so we got
right.
this idea. So what are some of the passages that as you were studying, getting ready for your sermon on Sunday, what are some of the passages that's coming to mind to really help underpin this topic here?
Oh my gosh, there's so much. And the more I started thinking about it, I had to like just kind of like cut it off because I was finding so much. I mean, obviously I can't preach all of it in the time we have, but like you can go all the way back to the Garden of Eden. And it's like I was thinking of the Garden of Eden, like there's God with dirt making Adam. Now I know he's not a zombie, but when we die, we turn to dirt. And I was thinking, wait a minute, God's taking the substance that a dead person turns into and making a live person from it right from the very beginning, and then taking flesh from Adam and bringing Eve to life with flesh. I'm like, that's kind of like sort of could be a zombie like thing. Now I know it's not zombie like grotesque and stuff, but they're right in the very beginning. God's taking the parts of the earth and making creatures out of it, and again the flesh and making living creatures out of it, and in a beautiful way. He said it was all good. It wasn't zombie like. But you could fast forward from there all the way to Ezekiel, and you mentioned it kind of in the introduction. Like Ezekiel has this fascinating passage in Ezekiel chapter 37 where the prophet goes to this valley full of dry bones, and I guess it was like a battle scene maybe where all these bones have been left and dried out, and God's like, hey, watch this, I'm going to put flesh on these bones and bring them back to life. And when you read it, it's like you're seeing this a crazy imagery of like, if it was in a movie, it would be so amazing, these bones, like flesh and tendons and organs and skin coming on these bones. And then it says they stand up as an army, and I was like, holy cow, there's a zombie army in the Bible,
Yes.
and now granted, they weren't like ghoulish, out to, be devilish and things like that. But I was like, to have witnessed that like Ezekiel did, it would have been like watching a Hollywood movie with all the parts and pieces coming back together. It would have been crazy to see that. Oh my goodness, I can keep going, Parker. There's a lot more. A really good one. Oh, this one's so good. Lazarus in the New Testament. Remember
Oh
Lazarus? So he
yes. Oh
died. Yeah,
yes.
and so he's dead. And the passage in John chapter 11, it says he had been dead for 4 days, and and Jesus is like, hey, open up the tomb. We're gonna bring him back to life. And they're like, but Jesus, he stinks. So I'm
Yeah.
like, he's dead.
He's a
Like
goner.
he's a
Okay.
goner. And so Jesus says, come forth. And so he comes forth, and he's wrapped in these, grave cloths. And I'm like, that's like the image of a mummy. There he
Hmm.
comes
Hmm.
out of a
Hmm.
grave cloth, and he stinks. And I'm wondering, like, did he have like bugs and maggots in his mouth and things like that? And
Hmm.
it must have been fascinating, but at the same time must have been a little bit like creepy, like, ooh, this is different, and I wonder how many baths he had to take to get the smell out of his hair and stuff. But
You
yeah,
know,
I mean, go
another one
ahead.
I was thinking of was Joe, not Joe, but Jonah, Jonah in the whale.
Oh
There's
yeah,
a
yeah.
zombie-like characteristic about that too, because he goes into the belly of the beast, and when you're in the belly of the, I'm sorry, not the belly of the beast, the fish, and
The
when you're
fish, right?
there, there's digestive juices that's in the belly of this
Oh
fish.
yeah,
And so he's not just sitting there in a cocoon, he's probably being dripped on by these things, and the Lord is preserving him in the midst of this darkness. And then he
that's
comes
right.
out. And people love to rag on chick publications, but dang it, though they had their day. Chick publications had their day. And I remember seeing that, and the way they depicted Jonah, he had his hair was fried off. He's like drenched in, you know, digestive
Oh,
juices,
pale.
fluid
Yeah, he
and
was so
water,
pale. Yeah,
eyes are like bugged out. And he's like, repent. And I'm like, I will repent too. So what's this coming at me like that? But
he was probably quite exfoliated.
but Jonah, he kind of exhibits that sort of zombie-like characteristics. But what do you think the theme is with some of these passages? What is the theme
Well,
that is coming through?
what I'm seeing like with all of these is that I mean, while stuff like, Jonah being spit up out of the whale is grotesque, Lazarus coming back from the dead and actually stinking, he was dead, it's grotesque. But in all these instances, what I'm seeing is that when the resurrections are happening, it's not unto a scary thing. Like they're not walking around with their flesh falling off like like the movie show. They're not unaware. They haven't lost their personalities. It's like it's not a terrible thing when they've been brought back to life in the Bible. And yeah, again, you can see some stuff that's Hollywood horror like if you kind of reconstruct it in your mind what it must look like. But again, not unto some deathly ghoulish thing, except the Revelation in Revelation 20. There's a resurrection there, and that one's pretty freaky. Um, so that one is like Revelation 20 talks about the resurrection of those that are being judged, and not to get like gloom and doom, but that's the you're going to go to hell kind of judgment. And that one talks about the dead coming back, even coming back out of the sea. So I'm like, imagine all the people that are getting ready to be judged. They're coming out of the ground, they're coming out of the sea, and then there's the bubbling fire of hell, things like that, and like that one's kind of creepy. But the rest of them, it's actually kind of a good thing to come back to life. It's like, hey, you're back, and you're in good shape, and you're in good health. And I would say that's the big theme I've noticed so far.
I think too, as you were saying, that something came to mind. The thing about zombies is, in a sense, resurrection, but it's a resurrection that is now guided by the Holy Spirit and by the
Right.
power of God. And for both, it's a sense of immortality, because the Bible does say, for this corruption must put on incorruption, and
You
this
got it.
mortality must put on immortality. And we're going to be in a place where we can suffer or reign with Christ as we choose, because it's a choice. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I think about, excuse me, mind ran two different miles in the direction. I think about that because we want to hold on to life, but would you want to hold on to life as a zombie? I think
No,
about how sin corrodes and corrupts our bodies. And if we were to live forever, would we, if we didn't have Christ in our life and were to live forever, would we end up looking like zombies? Because sin corrodes and in a spiritual way, but we also see the effects of sin in the physical as well. That's why
yeah,
older people they don't look as healthy and robust as they get older. What Solomon
right,
said, the strong men bow down and things like that nature. So I think too, zombies, as we perceive it, does not have godly power behind it. I think that's what I want
right.
to say. What do you think I'm trying to say, Clint? I think I'm saying it right, but
I think
tell me.
I agree with you. I think obviously no one wants to die, and the old ancient search for the fountain of youth. Maybe that kind of ties in a little bit that in some strange way, zombies or the zombieism, if you could call it that, maybe in some strange way that is kind of a crazy and dark hope of eternal life. But what kind of life would that be?
Hmm.
You're just falling apart. I mean, I've always thought in these movies like, well, if you could just wait a zombie out through winter, they wouldn't make it anyway. So
Yeah.
just I mean, they don't they're not going to make it. Just go live somewhere where it's cold and you're going to be fine. So, um,
Now, what are some of the
but,
other notes, as because you're doing this sermon on Sunday? So, what are some of the other notes that you've written down about your topic there?
um, well, one of them I think is fascinating. It gets missed a lot. Is that when Christ was crucified? So you don't hear it a lot, but there's in Matthew chapter 27, it talks about that as Christ was crucified, like some of the dead in the area, came out of the graves and they walked around. People saw them, and when I start, when I read that, I can't help but think like Michael Jackson's song, the Thriller, and you know it probably didn't look like that, grotesque and dark and spooky, but that song talks about darkness falls upon the land and
Mm-hmm.
all that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the passage talks about that. It was very all of a sudden the clouds got dark, the sky got dark, and the dead came forth, and I was like, wow, that's kind of scary, And again, it doesn't say they were ghoulish and dark and evil, but it kind of makes me think about that song every time I read that passage. And I don't know, I just thinking that we take the Bible sometimes and we kind of make it into this religious book, which it is, about a lot of do's and don'ts and religious and ceremonial things, and all that's in there for sure. But there's just some really cool stuff in there, and again, not zombies as we would define it per se, but some really crazy cool stuff in there that kind of like, yeah, that's kind of creepy, but in a fascinating way. So yeah, that's just some other stuff I was thinking about.
It's funny that you mentioned the Michael Jackson thing because that's when the zombies were cool because they were dancing.
You're
And
right.
I remember seeing it as a kid. I was so scared of Thriller.
Oh, me too, me too. I
Oh,
was
it
scared to death of it.
scared me to death because it really was quite terrifying. And then no one can do it like Vincent Price. No
Oh,
one.
his voice.
But you know who else was supposed to do it was Peter Lorre. And for those of you who don't know, and Clint and I are aging ourselves here, but the other person they had reached out to do was Peter Lorre, and Peter Lorre was Eeyore from the Dr. Frankenstein's assistant. He was also approached to do that narration that Vincent Price did.
Wow.
I don't know if you knew that. And actually, that
I
would
did
have
not
probably been
know.
good. That would have been just as good as Vincent Price because you know how Peter Lorre had that voice, that high, whiny voice. But it's not whiny, but it's just a thin voice. He go, darkness falls across the land. He would have did something like that, and it would have been good too. But of course, Vincent Price has a deep, rich, you know,
Oh,
authoritative voice. So
his voice on that video or the song, that's what got me. Like the video, I was like, okay, as a kid, it kind of made me a little scared, but the voice and his, that's what got me. It was like, wow, this is spooky.
yeah, I loved it. But the thing about it is that too, if we want to take a spiritual connotation with it, and just being a preacher, sometimes people feel as if they are zombies. They aren't getting the spiritual help that they need. They are dead inside. And for my reformed friends, this is right up your alley. Um, for my reform, because reforms say that you are dead,
Right.
and so people say are those who somewhat follow Arminianism will say, no, we're alive, we're just sick. Regardless, though, we are in a zombie state, half alive and half dead. And I would love you to use this opportunity to show that if you're spiritually feeling zombie-like, there is someone who could give you life again.
That's a great lead in. That was actually kind of like the last thing I had on my notes was just to make a movie quote. There's a movie in 1998 called "They Live." There was a wrestler named Roddy Piper. He wasn't the only star in the show, but he was in there, and you had to put on certain glasses to see these zombie type aliens. And if you put the glasses on, you could see them. If you didn't put the glasses on, you couldn't see them. They looked like normal people. And when I think about what you just said, that people are walking around in life, we all try to dress a certain way and act a certain way and talk a certain way. We don't want everybody to see our true self. But the reality is a lot of people are walking around, like you said, in a zombie state. They're hurting on the inside. And, the Bible, without getting too preachy, talks about being spiritually dead, but physically alive. So in some respects, we're all kind of zombie-like a little bit, needing that spiritual life from Christ in us. And, in the zombie movies, the ones that come back to the ones that are, reanimated dead bodies, there's no hope for them in the movies. But the ones that have like an infection, a lot of the newer zombie movies are kind of that persuasion, 28 days, 28, was it 28 weeks and 28 weeks later? Sorry.
Yeah, 28
28.
days and then 28 weeks later. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. That one and I Am Legend and World War Z, they're all infection based. So there was a cure for them if they could just get the cure. And I think about that and go, in a spiritual sense, our zombie state is kind of like that. We are able to be cured. We don't have to stay as a zombie per se. We're infected with sin, and there
Mm-hmm.
is a cure for that sin, and it's Christ. And Christ himself, he kind of went through. He's not a zombie, but he went through the whole coming back from the dead, where he walked out of the grave, left his grave clothes in the tomb, and walked out of the grave. So he's already been through that, and he's showing us, hey, there's hope for you. You don't have to stay spiritually dead and then one day stay physically dead and then one day. I'm sorry, I'm mixing it up. Stay spiritually dead while physically alive, and then one day physically dead and then be spiritually dead as well. You don't have to do that. You can be alive right now through Jesus Christ and be cured of that spiritual zombieism.
I think that's a good way of ending the show today. Now, this
Yeah,
is, if you want to hear his whole sermon gang, it's going to be available at the show link below. You can hear his sermon on Sunday, October 29th. So you can listen to him and then follow him. He also has some books. We're going to also
I
leave
do.
that link below. Last year
Yep.
we talked about, oh gosh, I can't remember the name of it. It was,
Oh, the Midnight Howler.
yeah,
Yeah.
the Midnight Howler. I kept going, ooh. I kept doing that because it's a children's book, little scary, spooky story for kids, but it wasn't too spooky, obviously.
Oh
It was
no,
just
not
the
at all.
kids just using their imagination. And one thing these kids do have is great imagination. So if you want some kids books as well, Clint does that as well. So make sure you go ahead, visit both links below in the show notes. Clint, thank you so much for being with me. Thanks for sharing some of your sermon with us. Looking forward to hearing it on Sunday. And then I can't wait to have you back with me and have you back real soon.
Parker, I love it. No, I really enjoyed being here. Thank you very much.
And dear listener, we just have fun talking about zombies. Could you believe it? There could be a biblical perspective about zombies. I hope you were encouraged by that. And then remember, Clint's going to be preaching on this on Sunday, and the link below will have the link for you to listen to that on Sunday or whenever you get a chance to listen to it. If you can't listen to it on Sunday, October 29th coming up. Thank you so much for being with me for this edition of the Sci-Fi and Horror Tropes from a Biblical Perspective series. We'll be back next time.